everyone, Millicent here. Welcome back to the channel and I hope you're having a very good day today. So in today's video, I will be talking about reverse culture shock, which I happened to experience this year when I went back to the UK during January. And as a disclaimer, anything that I say in today's video is not meant to offend anyone in any way. I'm just speaking from personal experience. And with that being said, if anything I mentioned in today's video you have similarly experienced, please let me know in the comments below, as I look forward to listening to and reading your stories. And on that note, let's go. So I'm just going to jump straight in, and the first thing that really surprised me when going back home was language. So obviously it was going to be the case, but it didn't kick in. Mainly the thing is that when we got there, I didn't expect to understand any and everything, because obviously like being in Korea, I have to guess a lot and think like, what is this? Or use like the small parts of the language that I do understand to try and get around and understand what's going on around me. But going back to England, I was like, oh my God, like I can read everything, I can understand everything, I can hear everything that everyone's saying. Like it really surprised me. And like it didn't fully kick in until I went to England, purely because when I was going home, I had to transfer. So I transferred in Istanbul, Turkey, and then went to England. So obviously it didn't hit me in Turkey either because I didn't understand everything. So I was like, oh, I'm used to this, like it's fine. But England, I was just like, whoa, I can read everything. So yeah, I think that's one of the first things that really like hit me in the face, which was language. Following directly from number one, we have number two, body language. So the main thing with body language is actually just being conscious and aware of the differences. So many people in South Korea and Japan too, actually, will usually bow their heads, mainly as a sign of respect, like hierarchy, gratitude, and like thanks. And obviously not a single day goes by where I do not do this here in South Korea, whether it's with my colleagues, people in the street, people who serve me in restaurants, like any and everywhere, right? So you do it like everywhere you go. And yeah, the main thing like I found myself wanting to or actually doing when back in England was literally bowing to some people. So I think the look on some people's faces were a bit like what is this? What are you doing? All right. Obviously I wouldn't say that, but you could like smell it in the air. But yeah, I'd definitely say like that's one thing. Like you have to be aware of like how the body language in your own country and, for example, South Korea, vary very differently, and vary quite often. But yeah, that's definitely another thing. Another thing within body language also is looking and staring. So obviously, being a foreigner in South Korea, many places where I go, people will stare or look for a little bit too long, which I actually got used to. Like you would just get used to it if you lived in a country where the people are mainly homogenous, so the country's mainly people from the country. Yeah, so you get used to like being the one that like stands out quite a lot. But being someone who's from England, I forgot, I guess to a certain degree, that I'm from a boiling pot country where any and everyone lives in England, right? So like no one was staring, and it was kind of like, it just kind of made me more aware of the stares that I get here. But yeah, I thought it hit me at one point also. I was like, wow, like you don't matter. Like no, not like you don't matter, but like no one really cares. And I don't know, it kind of like, it didn't bother me or make me feel more comfortable, but it was just something that kind of jumped out in retrospect, not during the moment. I think it was afterwards. It was like, wait, hang on, I normally would have been like looked at like here, for example. But yeah, I definitely say that like looking and staring is one, and another would have been, for example, like bowing where I shouldn't have been bowing. Number three, toilets. So a major difference sometimes is literally the toilets. So in the West we have, the toilets that you sit on, but in Korea they have two types. We have the toilets that you sit on, and we also have the kind of like hole, like porcelain toilets that are like on the floor. I can't describe this very well, I'm sorry, but I will put a picture. And the toilets that you would squat over. But yeah, South Korea has both, and sometimes when you're in public you will have the option for both. and they usually put like a little picture on the door that shows you the Western style and the squat type toilet. But also within this, don't quote me on this, but the buildings in Korea, I believe, have quite old plumbing and or small pipes, so they get easily blocked if they have too much toilet paper in them. So what you will find a lot, or almost always, in toilets in public in South Korea is something called a 휴지통, which is a bin, a waste bin, which is just for toilet paper. And yeah, so, you know, being in Korea for almost 3 years now, I got used to going to the toilet this way, like, you know, doing your business, and then putting the tissue paper into this separate waste bin. But being back in England, I remember I went to the toilet. This is all TMI, but I actually don't care at this point. I went to the toilet and I was just like, like, where's the 휴지통? Like, 어디야? Like, where's the toilet paper waste bin? But then I was like, why would they have it here? You're England. You're in England, girl. Like, sort it out. But yeah, so that's one thing that got me. Even if it's for like a split second, it still got me. So yeah, I was just like, 휴지통 없는 화장실? Like, oh, is it a toilet without the waste paper, without the waste toilet paper bin? But no, they just don't have it. But yeah, I definitely would say that toilets are one thing that got me back in England. Number 4, masks. Okay, I know this one is very specific to the pandemic, but it actually really did surprise me. And I think there is a cultural difference when it comes to this and how people behave when it comes to masks. So usually in Korea, you know, everyone's got their mask on and everything is covered up. So it's usually eyes only, like all day, every day. And the only time you normally would see someone like take the mask off is usually if they're eating at like a street food stand, sneaking a drink or smoking. But other than that, it's literally, as I said, all like eyes all day, every day. Like even when I'm teaching, we all wear masks. However, when I got to England, I was just like, noses. I can see mouths in public. What is this? And I actually remember my older sister, if you're watching this, hello. My older sister literally told me, like, Millie, I'm telling you now, before you come here, like, no, when you get here, do not be surprised. No one is wearing masks. Like, it's not that common. Like, most people are, more people are not. And I was like, okay, but like really, she wasn't lying. And it hit me because obviously, like, I came to Korea, when the pandemic started. So, and seeing as everyone here wears masks, I got used to like everyone and their cousin and their mother like wearing masks. But going back home, I was just like, I feel uncomfortable. But yeah, I think that's one thing that really, really, really got me. And I think, as I said, to do with culture, I think many people in Western countries have a very individualistic like mindset. So kind of like putting themselves first, I believe. But having come to Korea, I've learned from people around and seen that many people here kind of have like the group mentality, like the kind of like we. And I think that was one thing that was a bit tricky for me also, because we kind of are, I do come from like a me first country. But yeah, I think being here for so long and getting used to the group mentality, I think it's one reason why wearing masks was easier. So yeah, this is one thing that I don't mean to offend anyone, but it's one thing that I've like observed, is that like in Korea, I can only speak about Korea, but yeah, people wear masks more than back home. I don't know. But yeah, number 4 was masks. Number 5, surprises and complaints. Now, when I say these, I'm actually talking about myself. Like, I was surprised a lot, and I think I complained a little bit too much too. And so when I say surprises, I mean many different things generally just surprise me. Like, one thing being like how expensive the UK really is. Like, coming away and like stepping away and stepping outside of the UK, I was just like, what? That's too much. Because many things in Korea are a lot cheaper. So yeah, I definitely would say like how expensive some things are. For example, like food, like restaurants, like even public transport. Ooh. And when I talk about complaints, I'm talking about public transport itself. So I remember, so I went with Hyunsuk. I didn't go alone. I took my boyfriend to the UK also with me. And I remember we were on the train from London going back north. And I remember someone had their feet like on the chair opposite them, like one of the seats face each other. And I was just thinking, even subconsciously, I was just like, no one in Korea would do this. Like someone would tell them like, move your feet. An older person would probably like hit you or something. But that's one thing that really got me. I was like, wow, like Korean people wouldn't do that. And another thing, I'm sorry for the Londoners, but me and Hyunsuk were in London at one point as well on the tube or the underground, and Hyunsuk said to me, he was like, oh, like, do you want to sit down? And I was just like, no, no, like immediately I was like, no. So basically in South Korea on the underground or the 지하철, the chairs are, you know where I'm going with this, the chairs are cleaned very frequently. So I think during winter, during the cold seasons, the chairs have like a fabric lining on them, you know, to keep you warm, to keep you warmer. And then in summer, the fabric lining is removed and the chairs are just kept metal to keep you cooler. And they're cleaned up quite frequently. However, the ones in London, I'm gonna use the word discoloured. The ones in London are rather discoloured, and yeah, just seeing it, like I thought Seoul, like the underground in Seoul, like, and in Busan, I was like, I can't sit down, no. So yeah, like when Hyunsuk asked me, I was just like, I will stand, don't mind me. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And I think the only time I did sit on the underground, I was on the edge of the chair, and that was from on the very, very, very long journey on the Piccadilly line, which was from Heathrow Terminal 4 all the way up to, I believe, Green Park. Green Park's Piccadilly line, right? But yeah, like the journey is like really long, and I was like, I'm not standing up for its entirety. But yeah, I only sat on the underground going from Heathrow Terminal 4 to Green Park, and then when we were leaving England, from Green Park back to Heathrow Terminal 4. So yeah, I'm sorry, I ended up complaining a lot when I went back home. I think many things really just hit me in the face, like straight up, but yeah. Okay, so I actually just mentioned 5 things that surprised me when going back home, back to England. However, I would like to also mention 3 things that surprised me when coming back to Korea. So let's go. Number 1, moving backwards. So I say this as it's kind of like a 2-parter, but basically when going to England, I felt like I was moving backwards. Just in the sense that, like, you know, you're going back to a sense of familiarity. Like many of the shops and like buildings that I knew were in the same place. However, I was the one who had changed. So I felt like I was going backwards, and it felt like in a sense that I was kind of like undoing like the progress and like the change that I had made, like on myself. And obviously that wasn't the case. It was obviously just stepping back into things that were familiar. But I guess I was expecting some things to change with time as well. So obviously when I came to Korea, everything changed. Like everything, nothing was the same. The only thing that was the same were the clothes that I brought with me. Like my environment changed, the language that I had to speak and changed, the way people behaved and spoke changed, like everything changed, right? So when going back to England, I guess I expected, oh, everything will be different, kind of like thinking, when really not the case. So yeah, I felt like I was going backwards. But I guess with this, in retrospect, it really made me think about like how much I really had been through, just in terms of going from England and coming to Korea. So yeah, that's one thing that surprised me. It's like, wow, like you did this before. And I guess it's strange, even though England's home, but coming back to Korea, it kind of then continued to feel like I was moving forwards. Definitely a strange one. Number 2, understanding. So when getting off the plane and arriving at arrivals in Incheon Airport, Seoul's international airport, I remember feeling like a sense of like relief. So strange, but being surrounded by Hangul, or the Korean characters that make up their alphabet in a way, that make up the language basically, being surrounded by that again, I was just like, oh, like, I can't explain it, but it weirdly felt strange but good to be surrounded by the characters, and also to kind of be surrounded by a language that I didn't fully understand. I know that's weird because you'd want to understand everything about your surroundings, but it weirdly felt like home, being surrounded by Korean once again. Cannot put my finger on why, but that's one thing that surprised me, that I would find comfort in being uncomfortable and kind of being like left out of some information. And by that I mean like not being able to understand everything. But yeah, that definitely also surprised me. Number 3 and last one, wonder. So once again, when arriving at Incheon International Airport in Seoul, I remember not too long after, I literally just started crying. And it was for the same thing I just mentioned, but for the other side of it. So being surrounded by Korean, being surrounded by Hangul, and being surrounded by a language that I do not understand the majority of. Sure, there is comfort in it, purely because this is home. Like, I live in Korea, I talk with Korean people in Korean all day, every day. However, even though that I do feel comfort in that, and it's what I've grown accustomed to, at the same time, imagine being in a space or a place where you're not fully understood all of the time. Unless I'm talking in specific terms, for example, like what is the date next week, Tuesday? Like, I can talk about things like this all day, every day. However, if I want to talk more specifically about something, about like how I'm feeling, I need to know like all of the words, right? And I guess like when I arrived back and when I was crying, I just remembered like all of the things I went through the first time when coming here. So yes, I conquered it all. However, it just reminded me of like the anxiety that I felt, the depression that I felt, and like the sense of panic that I felt at not being understood and being in a place that just was so entirely different to home. However, when I mentioned wonder, I remember that I am a person who was moved to the other side of the world, and I did it once before, so why wouldn't I be able to do it again? Like, I developed and improved my language skills like I wanted to. I came out here and improved my Korean skills in situ, so in situations, rather than purely online, for example. And I did that. Like, I'm a whole British woman living in South Korea, and I had the courage to do all of that. And yeah, it just reminded me of like, you're amazing. Like, you did this and you should never forget that. And I'm incredibly proud of myself. So yeah, number 3, last one, wonder. And there we have it. Today's YouTube video on reverse culture shock. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I hope that nothing I said in this video offended anyone or rubbed anyone the wrong way. It wasn't my intention. I am just speaking purely from personal experience. And with that being said, if you have had similar experiences, don't forget to leave a comment below. I look forward to reading them all. So don't forget also to leave a like, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget that Simon says, go traveling, explore your mind, discover more, and stay curious.